I am so sad it's almost over. We're almost done. Our five-episode series on the Maryland Terrapins all-time football team. We're to our final installment here with Coach Ralph Friedgen, special teams and coaches. How you doing, Coach?
Doing good, Larry.
Good. Glad to have you back one final time. Very excited about this one. There's someone going to be mentioned in here that I know you don't want to talk about, but we're gonna force you to talk about it. Well, let's get started. We're going to start with the special teams. We're going to start with the punters. First team, Adam Podlesh, 2003 to 2006. He was an ACC second team 4 times. As far as I can tell, is the only player in Maryland history to be a first or second team all-conference player 4 times. The only one ever to do that. He's second all-time in punting average in Maryland. And he was drafted as a punter, which, as you know, is very rare. As far as I could tell, I think there were only 2, but he's one of them. He was the 101st pick.
You know, Adam was a really consistent punter, very good athlete. You know, he ran 4.5. Probably one of my big regrets is that we didn't do more fakes with him because he could really run. But really came and, you know, we recruited him as a punter, and he came down to one of our camps and really liked what I saw because he could get the ball off on time too, and did a very good job for us.
Second team, Brooks Bernard from 1999 to 2002. So just preceding Adam Podlesh there, played on some of those really great teams in the 2000s. He was a 2-time all-conference, all first team ACC, and he's first in all-time punting average in Maryland history.
I think, you know, I think you go either way with Brooks.
Yeah.
They probably should be tied for first, both of them. But Brooks did an excellent job for us as a punter, and he made a couple of really big catches for us too. But you know, one thing we didn't put in here, and we probably should have thought about, is the long snapper for the special teams. You know, but that's another story. Anyway, I have an interesting story with Brooks. You know, we're going to play our first game against North Carolina, and I'm like one of these guys that's really a stickler for being on time. You know, if it says we're going to have a pregame meal at 7 o'clock, you need to be there at 6:45. I'm one of those, you know. Well, Brooks probably either overslept or he was late. Like, it might have been 5 minutes late, but the door closes, and when you're not there on the time, you don't get to eat. So this is the first pregame meal we have, and I just told him, go back to your room. That, you know, Ray Brzezinski, who really did a great job for me as a special teams coach, he comes over to me and says, you're not going to play him? I said, no, I didn't say I wasn't going to play him. I just said he's not going to eat breakfast. So I said, I'm not that stupid. You know, so we sent him back, and then I heard later how they all brought him food up to eat. So that showed me that they're a team. They want to take care of their boy. But he didn't miss any more meetings.
Yeah, well, you deprive a man of his food, he's going to spring into action after that, Coach. All right, especially a young man who's a football player, they're going to want to eat. All right, Colton Spangler, third team, just finished with the team. He's third all time in punting average. I did not realize that. I did not expect to see that. He did not make any all-conference teams or anything like that, but obviously a very good punter when you're third all time in the history of Maryland football.
Yeah. You know, he must be doing a good job. I don't know a whole lot about him, but he's the third all-time punters because there's been some good punters at Maryland.
Right. One of them is the underrated punter is Darrell Wright, 1984 to 87, Coach.
Very good punter for us. You know, he's part of those teams that won 3 ACC championships, and he came up big for us a lot of times in key situations.
And as far as I can tell, one of 6 punters in Maryland history to have over 200 punts. Obviously, you don't even want many. That's the one position you don't even want to play, really, right? Because you want your team to do well. All right, honorable mention. Travis Balt, 2007 to 2010. He's there because he did make a first-team all-conference player. I don't know if you – oh, yeah, he was at the end of your coaching tenure there.
Yeah, he was there with us. And then, you know, he ended up being a place kicker for us too. We had one of our place kickers got hurt, and Travis came in and did both the punting and the place kicking. So he did a very good job for us at Maryland.
And Scott Milanovic, this is in this presentation here, you're going to see a bunch of guys who you've seen multiple positions, and this one is it's funny. Quarterbacks used to also be punters quite frequently. Is that true, Coach?
Yeah, I was a punter too.
Oh,
In high school, I was. Yeah.
Many offensive lineman / punter combos.
They actually tried to have me punt as an offensive lineman, and what I found is my legs were shot. I did a punt.
How far could you punt it, Coach?
I punted in the high 38s, 39s, somewhere in there. As an average.
Yeah, that's pretty good. That's really good, actually.
Not bad.
Yeah.
Every now and then I hit a pretty good one.
Yeah. So Scott Milanovic made a first team all conference as a punter. So there you go. I did not realize that. I kind of remember he punted. And then who was the Dallas Cowboys quarterback? Danny White. Wasn't he a great punter too? It seemed like it was way more common back then, but okay.
Well, if you got a quarterback back there, you can do some things,
Right. Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah.
All right. Let's go to the place kickers. First team, Nick the Kick, Nick Novak, 2001 to 2004, two-time first team all ACC player. He's first all-time in field goals and first all-time in extra points in Maryland history. I still remember, Coach, the game against Georgia Tech. The one to tie it, right, and then one in overtime to win it. Isn't that how it went? In 2001, yeah. Right?
Yeah, Nick.
When they were ranked or whoever, I don't remember what they were ranked, but.
Well, we went down to Georgia Tech. We were 6-0. They were. I think they had lost one game. I don't know. They may have been undefeated too. And of course, the goal for our team that year is to win 6 games, and we were 5-0. Excuse me. We had to win that game. So we go down there, and Nick had been on a slump. He had missed 5 or 6 field goals in the first, and I was on him. We worked extra. I had this drill they hated that I did with him on Monday nights, but so Nick, we get the ball, we drive it down there, and now we got to kick a 48-yard field goal to tie the game, and I think there's 20 seconds to go in the game or whatever. So George O'Leary, who I worked for, I knew he was going to freeze him. That's what he always does. And I brought Nick over to the sideline. And I never like to leave the kicker out there, I want him to kind of get his mind off it. So he came over, and I can't really tell you what I said to him, but I talk about this in the football by Friedgen. And Nick called me. He said, "Why didn't you tell him the real thing you said to me?" He called me up on it. So I said, "I bet you $100 you won't make this kick." And I didn't quite use those same terms, but he started laughing. And then he goes out there, and my daughter made a big play of this on Football by Friedgen, and because Corso was one of the announcers for ESPN, and Corso recruited me. So Corso starts talking about it. There's no way this guy's going to make this kick. It's out of his range, blah, 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 blah. Well, I said, Nick, before we left, we always ended it with a long field goal. And I think he kicked the 50-yarder on Thursday before we left, or maybe it was Friday. And I said to him, Nick, it's just like hitting a golf ball. Don't overkick it. Just smooth. Keep your eye on it. Just follow through. Well, he makes the field goal. And the place goes nuts. Now we're tied, and we go into overtime. And Joe Burns fumbles. And Randy Starks caused the fumble, and EJ helped also. And we got the ball back, and he kicked the field goal to win the game in overtime. So, and then he went on to, I think he's the leader in the ACC in scoring for quite a number of years. I don't know if he still is, but ended up kicking in the NFL for 15 years. And now he has a school for kicking in San Diego. And he's one of my wife's favorite kids. She tutored him. He's really a hardworking kid. So, we're kind of sentimental. I see the next guy is the Lou Grozer Award. That's pretty good to win that award, especially at Maryland. So,
yeah. Brad Craddock is who you're talking about, who
Right.
played from 2012 to 2015 under Randy Edsall. He's a first team All ACC player, won the Lou Groza Award. He's third all time in field goals and third all time in extra points. Yeah.
And the next guy we got is Jess Atkinson, who kicked for us when we came back to Maryland with Coach Ross. And Jess was a fine kicker, and then Jess helped me out. He got into sportscasting and did a lot of videoing himself, and he made a highlight film for me that really turned the season around for us. And Jess has been a real good friend of mine and friend of Maryland's for a long time. He's still in the Maryland area. He's still working.
Right. He played from 81 to 84 on those great ACC championship teams. He was a first team All ACC kicker. He's second all times in field goals and second all time in extra points in Maryland history. So those are the top three in statistics. And then we get to our underrated player. It's Dan Plotke. You talked about him in a previous episode, kicking that field goal to beat Clemson,
Right.
1985 to 1988.
Yeah, he did a nice job for us, and especially kicking under pressure, which he had a lot of pressure. I remember Clemson tried to freeze him, and after he made the field goal, he came over and told me how they were calling me all these bad names. I said, it doesn't matter. You made the field goal. Game's over. We won.
Yeah, and he was also a first-team All-Conference player, and he's fourth in all the statistics. So, and then honorable mention players: Ricardo Bramson, 64 to 66.
All right, I put him down because he kicked when I was there, and many of the old-time Maryland people will remember this. Coach Nugent was always a gimmick guy, so Ricardo would change his number to correspond with the number of points he had for that season. So if he came out and kicked an extra point, he'd be 1. If he came out and kicked a field goal after that, he'd be 4. And so you would know how many points he scored by the number of jerseys he had. And I don't know if you couldn't do that today because you can't have 2 of the same numbers on at the field at the same time. I don't know how they managed that back then, but I thought that was kind of weird. But I don't know what his stats were, but he was a pretty good kicker for us.
Yeah, they also have specific field positions. You can't be in, like, linemen have to have certain numbers and things like that too. So, yeah, you really couldn't do that. Steve Mike, 1972 to
I think this guy was Mike Mayer. I think Steve Mike Mayer is the full.
Is his full name? Did I?
I think so.
But Steve Mike Mayer.
He was a really good place kicker. I was still there, but I think he kicked for Leicester.
And he was a first-team All-Conference player as well. And then we have Dale Castro, 1978 to 1980.
He kicked for Coach Claiborne and was a good kicker also.
Yeah, and
good kickers now.
Yeah, and he's listed as a first-team All-America. By the way, Coach, no conference first teams, but listed as a first-team All-America in the Maryland record book.
That used to happen in the ACC now.
Yeah. Well, we talked about in the QB episode about Boomer being the best quarterback, but they kept giving the All-ACC spot to Bennett from Duke. So, yeah, there you go. Okay. All right. Kickoff returners. So this was interesting to me that the stats are really different for kickoff returners and punt returners. And so before I even get into it, Coach, what's making a good kickoff returner? What's making a good punt returner? And why aren't they the same thing? Seems very similar.
A good kickoff, a good punt returner has to make the first guy miss. Usually, he catches the ball and now there's somebody right on him right now. A kickoff guy gets to run and has to find the seam. So it's a little bit different technique. And usually you don't see a guy that does both very well. It's usually a kickoff guy who really has a burst that can, and then it has to be well coordinated and blocked well. When we get to punting and Steve Suter, they had one of the things I thought that Steve really took advantage of. They had changed the rules as far as covering a punt. You had to give the returner at least 2 yards area. So Steve never fair caught a ball, and
Yeah.
he was willing. He was good enough where he could catch the ball, and even if that guy was just, he knew he wasn't going to get hit, that he would make that guy miss, and then he would get great blocking, but he also had great speed, and all he needed was and Torrey was the same way. Once Torrey gets going, you're not going to catch him.
Right.
And I remember I think it was the Humanitarian Bowl we played out in I think it was Utah, one of those places out there. But my special teams coach left and went to Clemson, Danny Pearman, and I put a GA responsible for special teams, and he came up with this kickoff return, and the opening kickoff, Torrey took it 101 yards for a touchdown, and I had a GA coach in my special teams. He did a heck of a job for his first play to be contested. So.
Yep. Torrey Smith, second team All-ACC as a special teams player. He also did make All-ACC as a wide receiver. So this is his special teams All-ACC nomination. He's first all-time by a lot in Maryland history in kick return yards. He has 2,983 yards in his time at Maryland. Second is Will Likely, who we have listed there, is 2,200. He's 750 yards ahead of him. So he kind of dwarfs everybody in those statistics. And he's also tied for first all time in kickoff return touchdowns. And he was a 58th pick. And you already talked about him. So let's move to Will Likely, who, by the way, little spoiler alert, he's the only guy who's going to be on both of these lists. So that's pretty interesting. 2013 to 2016 for Will Likely, two-time Big Ten first-team player as a special teamer. He didn't get the award as a defensive back. He got it both times as a special teams player. He's second all-time in kick return yards and tied for third all-time in kick return touchdowns with 2. Javon Leake, third, was 2017 to 2019. He was a Big Ten first team as well. Fifth all-time in kick return yards, tied for first in all-time kick return touchdowns. He had 3 of them, tied with Torrey.
Huh.
Yep. Okay, our underrated kick returner. Underrated kick returner was Ty Johnson. Look at these guys all playing in similar time frames here. Ty Johnson, 2015 to 2018. He had 2 touchdown kickoff returns for touchdowns as well. He's lower down on the yardage list, but he had the 2 touchdowns. That's why we put him there as our underrated player. And you talked about him. Did he go to the Jets?
He was with the Jets. I think he's with the Buffalo Bills.
For the Bills now.
I like him as a player.
Yeah.
The coach him, don't know him, but I enjoy watching him run.
Now, one of the most favorite of the current Maryland fandom, Stefon Diggs, we have as an honorable mention for kickoff returns. He was 2012 to 2014. He did have 2 kickoff returns for a touchdown as well. He did not make a all-conference team as a returner. So, Stefon, we've talked about him in the wide receiver episode. You want to hear about him? Go back to that one. Larry Marshall, 1969 to 1971. 4th all-time in kickoff returns in Maryland history. You had him, right, Coach? Or you played with him?
He played with me. Yeah, he was a really good returner. I think he got drafted also as a returner, and a punt returner also, I believe. Yeah, Larry did a good job. Of course, he probably got a chance to return a lot of kickoffs.
Well, there you go. That's why you rack up the yards, I guess. And Chad Scott, 95 to 96. We had him in there as well. He's drafted 24th overall, a great kickoff returner. Let's go to the punt returners. You mentioned him, Steve Suter. He's been on the show multiple times. We love Steve Suter, friend of the show. 2002 to 2004, he was a 2-time first-team All-ACC player as a returner, not as a wide receiver. First all-time in punt return yards in Maryland history. first all-time in punt return touchdowns in Maryland history, and first all-time in NCAA punt return touchdowns with 6.
I tell you, he was explosive. And you talk about a guy that starts momentum. You get one of those punt returns for a touchdown, it just swings the whole momentum in the game. And Steve just had a fantastic year. I believe it was 2003, where he, really got things going for us, and really became a really good wide receiver for us also, and made some really big plays. I know in the 2002 NC State game, came up with a huge catch that got us in position to kick the field goal to win the game. So really, a really special talent.
And didn't he have, was it the Gator Bowl against West Virginia, or he
Yeah,
had one?
he had a fantastic catch in 2003 Gator Bowl.
And didn't he return a punt too, right?
He returned a punt there in that game, and then he returned a punt against West Virginia in 2002 also. And
Okay.
so he had 2 of them against the same 2 different years, but the same team.
Second team punt returner. So he was second team kickoff returner and second team punt returner. Will Likely, 2013 and 2016. We have his 2 All-SEC first team selections there again. He's third all-time in punt return yards, second all-time in punt return touchdowns. He had 4 of them. He had 2 as a kick returner, 4 as a punt returner, 6 total, which ties Steve Suter. It's just that his were spread out amongst kicks and punts. So Will Likely, 2013, 2016. And now somebody that I think you coached probably as a graduate assistant, Bob Smith. We talked about him as a wide receiver.
Right.
He's second all-time in punt return yards, third all-time in punt return touchdowns.
Yeah, he was, like I said, he was a very good athlete, and he was a big guy too. He wasn't, he was over 6 foot and very good athlete, could run. I remember Bob very well.
Our underrated punt returner is Tony Logan. He played from 2009 to 2011, so he played with you for a little bit with Edsel, and he is fourth all-time in punt return yards and also had 2 punt return touchdowns. I did not remember that.
Yeah, he was a little bit like Steve. If Steve had a little more evasiveness to him, but Tony could run, and if he got an opening, he was going to be gone, and he really liked doing it too. So he was good at that.
Our honorable mention punt returners, Julian Gary, 1998 to 2001. So what I remember more from Julian Gary was the catch. Was it against NC State or Clemson that was it against NC State where that to clinch the
NC State
ACC?
final 5 seconds, yeah.
Yeah, I he's fifth all time in punt return yards, but maybe more interesting is that catch in that game. That was pretty amazing when they clinched the title.
Yeah, I go over that in football by Friedgen too, and that was and actually Sean called the play. I would have called the same play. Charlie Taft wanted us to kill the ball at that point in time, and I signaled to Sean to go ahead and run the play, and he did, and he was going to Julian all the way, and Julian ran a great route. Julian made such big plays for us in 2001, and the first thing that I would tell Coach Rasuski on punt return is I have to have a guy that's going to catch the ball. What drives me nuts on a punt, if it's a short punt and you let the ball bounce and now it goes another 20 yards, that's field position. That's first downs we got to make up. So, that guy's got to catch the ball. And my first year at Maryland, Julian was the best guy to catch the ball, and he did a heck of a job of doing that. And then, of course, Ray should be complimented because he did an excellent job. A lot of these guys we're talking about were all part of his special teams. So, but, Julian was invaluable to us in 2001 as far as making plays. And we had a good group of wide receivers. I think they were all pretty equal, but Julian just made a lot of plays.
Yep. Jermaine, now this is a surprise to me. We have Jermaine Lewis here, 92 to 95 is an honorable mention. As a Ravens fan, maybe I'm just conflating the Terps and the Ravens years. He was one of the best returners in the NFL. He made the All-Pro team twice. for
Really?
special teams for return. Yes. And so that's why when I came to this, I was like, oh, he's going to be one of the best. He just didn't do it very often. He's ninth all time in punt return yards in Maryland history. He did get 2 punt return touchdowns, which is not a surprise, but he just, I guess, just didn't do it very often
I
under
would have thought, I worked him out when I was at the Chargers, and they sent me to Maryland to work him out. And I could see he was explosive. He had some real burst to him. I would think he would be a really good punt returner. Maybe that's why they sent me. But I worked him out as a wide receiver and as a punt returner.
Yeah. Well, and we talked about him in the wide receiver episode too, so you guys can get more stories about him if you go back to that episode. And then our last honorable mention for punt returners is Ronnie Waller. He played from 52 to 54 on the golden era of Maryland Terrapin teams, and he was 8th all time in punt return yards, and he had 2 punt return touchdowns. So that's why he's on here. Ronnie Waller. I don't know if you know much about him, Coach.
I was 5 years old when he played.
Yes, yeah. So I wasn't born yet. Yeah. So there you go. Those are our special teams players. Great special teams in Maryland history. Now we're going to get to a very, very special teams, but now a special portion of the of our all-time Maryland team. We're getting to the coaches here, and I know you're excited. Where's Coach Ralph Friedgen going to come up? Not first team. We got Jim Tatum on the first team. It's hard to argue with these numbers when you're talking about Maryland football. Coach from 47 to 55, 9 seasons. He was 73 and 15 and 4 ties. He made 5 bowl games in those 9 seasons at a time when you had to go 10 and 1 to get to a bowl game. He would have been, and I think I was looking at the records. I think he would have been in all 9 seasons. He had a winning record if the rules were the same as now. But he made 5. He won 2 ACC titles, had a Southern Conference title. Yes, he coached that long ago, before Maryland was even in the ACC. Maryland joined in 53. 1953 national title. What else do you need to say besides that at Maryland? ACC Coach of the Year in 53 and 55. National Coach of the Year in 53. College Hall of Fame. But obviously, the only coach in Maryland history to get the national title.
What can you say?
What can you say?
He's won a national championship.
Right.
You got to go with that. Plus, they had great teams there, and then he left and went to North Carolina too. And I didn't think he had really good teams there too. So he was a fantastic coach.
Yeah, Maryland, the only national championship in Maryland history. Got to give it to Coach Tatum there, especially that win-loss percentage too. Second, go with Jerry Claiborne. Okay, 72 to 81, 10 seasons, 77 wins. We'll take note of that number. 77 wins, 77 wins, which is second all time. We'll get to the other numbers for other coaches later. 77, 37, and 3 ties. He made 7 bowl games, which is a record at Maryland. Tied for first. We'll get to who had tied him later. 3 ACC titles. ACC Coach of the Year 3 times, 73, 75, and 76. National Coach of the Year in 74. That looks very weird, but I have double and triple checked it. This is accurate. He was the ACC Coach of the Year in 73, 75, 76, 74, National Coach of the Year, and he's in the College Hall of Fame.
I think what might explain that is in 73, you got to understand that Coach Claiborne came in kind of like I came in. Maryland hadn't won.
Right.
I was there with Tom Nugent and then Bob Ward and then Roy Lester, and then Coach Claiborne came in. And so I don't know if the combined records of those 3 coaches is not very good. And
no, it's not.
Nugent was the best of them. So he comes in and they do pretty well the first year. So he gets ACC Coach of the Year for probably coming in and turning the program around his first year. And then probably 74, 75, and 76, I think they won ACC championships.
Yes, they did.
So, and he was probably consensus National Coach of the Year by all the different Coach of the Year awards.
Yet another Terp being recognized nationally, but being shunned by its own conference. Thank God we got out of that conference, Coach. All right. Let's go to the third team. Who do we have? Somebody named Ralph Friedgen? Ralph
Free
Farid.
gin, it's like the alcohol.
Okay. Third team all time. Coach Ralph Friedgen, 2001 to 2010. And I know you hate this. You didn't want to brag on yourself. I said I was going to do it for you. You didn't want any part of that. But 10 seasons, 75 and 50, which is third all time, and could have been second. We'll get to that story. I want you to tell that story you told me about that. The 7 bowl games, which is tied for the most all time in Maryland history. 5 bowl victories, which is the most in Maryland history. 1 ACC title, ACC Coach of the Year in 2001 and 2010. Bookends your first and last year. And by the way, National Coach of the Year in 2001. But by the way, they fired you after you won Coach of the Year. What is up with that, Coach?
I don't know. That you're gonna have to don't ask me.
Oh, yeah. And then, yes, what was the phrase, Coach? It was from good to
Good.
great.
Yeah, how'd that work out?
It did not work out. It did not work out. After you was Coach Etchell, he did have a couple of good seasons. We'll give him credit for that. So, yeah. Well, it was a mistake. We'll just say it that way. We'll just put it that way, that it was a mistake. Coach Friedgen, we have you on the third team in Maryland history. Now let's go to our underrated coach. And here's the thing. There's kind of a big four in Maryland coach history. We talked about Tatum, Claiborne. We talked about you, Coach Friedgen, and Bobby Ross. What order you put these guys in? It's kind of tough. Bobby Ross is an underrated. He's well loved in the Maryland community. But he, as the underrated coach, he coached 81 to 86, 5 seasons. He was 39, 19, and 1, 4 bowl games in those 5 years, 3 ACC titles in those 5 years. He was the ACC Coach of the Year and National Coach of the Year in 1982.
We really had some good football teams back then. Coach Ross came in and really, you know, in Maryland, you know, it's not only hard to win, but you have to be entertaining to put people in the stands. And Coach Ross, when he came in, Coach Claiborne was a kind of a defensive coach, run orientated, and they did a great job of winning. And I learned so much under him; it's unbelievable. But when Coach came in, we had some people that we could do. We had Boomer Esiason and Frank Wright, and Stan Gelball, and I had probably the best offensive line that I had coached in 43 years, college or pro. That's how good we were, I thought. So, Coach came in, and not only did we start winning, we started putting people in the stands again, and got people excited. And a lot of from that experience, I learned a lot of things to try to do the same thing when I got there. So I was very fortunate to coach under Coach Claiborne and also coach under Bobby Ross. And a lot of that's, and being at Maryland, that whole experience, what they did, how to navigate some of the things at Maryland really helped me as a coach.
And things were rolling, like you said, and we all know what happened. If you're a Maryland fan, you know what happened. Lenny Bias, obviously, it all stems from that. And the sanctions that got put down on the entire athletic department, not just the basketball program, and that kind of forced your guys' hand. Is that correct? You guys would have kept going, don't you think, had that not happened?
Well, yeah, the whole, I think, that whole thing and how Maryland reacted to the thing um, probably set Maryland back 20 years. I mean, it's,
Yes, easily.
and I think Coach Ross probably would have stayed longer than 5 years if that hadn't happened.
Right.
So it's but Coach, we went down to Georgia Tech and we struggled our first couple of years, but he hung in there and we got it going and ended up not only winning a conference championship but winning a national championship. So Bobby
How
Ross, the
sad.
football coach.
How sad that did not happen at Maryland. That could have been, maybe Maryland wins the national championship in 1990, and the program's entirely different. But since that moment, since the sanctions, since that happened in the mid 80s, it's been an entirely different story for the Terps. And there's been some bright moments, obviously, your years. And hopefully we're getting back to that. 3 straight bowl games, 3 straight bowl game wins. And we're going to see that right now when we get to our coach's honorable mention. Since I led into it, we're going to start with Coach Loxley, even though alphabetically he's third, 2019 to TBD. Hopefully that's a long time from now. Hopefully 5 seasons, 28 and 28, which at Maryland since 86, being 500 is really good. There's only one coach who's been over 500 since then. Mike Loxley's hopefully going to eke above that this year. 3 straight bowl games, 3 straight bowl game wins. Hopefully on the trajectory that's going up, return to respectability for the program. He's done an amazing job.
No question about it. And I just hope Mike can navigate this new environment they're in, you know, because Maryland has really everything they've ever wanted as far as facilities, as far as being able to recruit. Mike's really a great recruiter, and he's got a great staff. I just, you know, it's just, I don't know how much all that goes when you just have to pay the kids now to come, and how much resources Maryland has. That'll be the key.
Right. And it's ever changing too. So we can't even, it's hard to even speculate how that's going to work out, but he's doing a great job. And if he stays and keeps going, I think I said there's a big 4 in Maryland history. Hopefully he can make it a big 5. That's what we're hoping here. We'll go back to the top here. Curly Bird, 1912 to 1934, 22 seasons, 117, 82, and 15. He's the all-time leader in wins in Maryland history. Didn't win any conference titles, partially because he coached before Maryland was in a conference. Then he played in something called the South Atlantic Intercollegiate Athletic Association. Then he coached in the Southern Conference, in which there were 20-some teams. He got a lot of second places, never got a first place, though.
And he became president of the university. So
president of the
he finally
university.
got smart and hired a football coach as president.
Wait, that's you should be next. You should go and be the university president. There we go. Yeah, if you're talking about Maryland football history, you can't not mention Curly Bird. Frank Dobson, 36 to 1939. He's here because there are only 5 coaches who've won a conference championship in Maryland history. He's one of them. He coached for 4 seasons, only 18 and 21, but he did win the Southern Conference in 1937. That's why we have him here. Do you know anything else about him, Coach, from the 30s? Yeah. Okay. Let's go on to I have this guy here. He's a little bit of a novelty. I thought this was interesting. You go back all the way to 1893.
And don't ask me if I know much about this guy either.
You got Samuel Harding, which sounds kind of like one of those old presidents, doesn't it? I know there's Warren Harding. Warren G. Harding was a president, but Samuel Harding sounds like he was his cousin and a president too. Anyway, 1893, he went 6-0 in 1893. And what's unique about that? The only time Maryland's ever gone undefeated in any season in its history, 6-0. He was the coach to do it. He's also, because it was the only season he coached, he's the only coach in Maryland history to have an undefeated record. So there you go. You learned something about Maryland football history. Samuel Harding.
I wonder if they fired him also.
Maybe. All right. His full name, they called him Pop also, by the way. There's another tidbit for you. They called him Pop Harding. So there you go. And it was also back then, it wasn't even called University of Maryland. It was called the Maryland Agricultural College. So if you really want to get into the Maryland history, there you go. All right. Our last coach on honorable mention, Tom Nugent, 1959 to 1965. He coached 7 seasons, 36 and 34. Is notable because there are not that many coaches in Maryland history to have a winning record. He's one of them. He's 6 all-time in wins. And he also is responsible for recruiting a little-known offensive lineman who would go on to become one of Maryland's greatest coaches of all time, a guy named Ralph Friedgen.
Yeah, Coach Nugent recruited me, actually Lee Corso. I played at Harrison High School in Harrison, New York, and our big rival was Rye High School, and Rye was coached by John Nugent and Coach Nugent's brother, and he recommended him to recruit me, and that's why I ended up going to Maryland.
Was it because of the punting, Coach?
What's that?
Was it because of your punting? You said
No,
earlier.
they actually tried me as a punter there, but
Yeah.
I had well, I was a quarterback with Tom on the freshman team. My last game, I threw 3 touchdown passes, and then he moved me to running back. But
No?
then next year, Bob Ward came in. Excuse me, Tom, Lou Saban came in, and I was going to be redshirted, and they moved Alan Pastrana from linebacker to quarterback. I didn't even know he was a quarterback, and then our fullback got hurt. They moved me to fullback, and I played as a sophomore at fullback. And then Bob Ward came in, and I think because I got in the most fights in the wrestling room, he moved me to offensive guard. Never knew I was a quarterback, and and then I ended up staying with Roy Lester as a coach the freshman team, and then Coach Claiborne came in, and I ended up staying with a year with him as a graduate assistant. So,
Well, there you go. That is our walk through Maryland history. We just finished up in this episode the special teams and coaches, but this has been a 5-part series. We'll put all the links in the description for you so you can watch the entire thing. It's been a lot of fun doing this, Coach. I mean, for me, it was a learning experience. I spent so much time just scouring the data. And then also having you with your stories was just, at first I thought, how cool would it be to do a series of the Maryland All Time? And then what it ends up being, it turned up being just a vehicle for you to tell these amazing stories. And that ended up being the coolest part for me. So,
well, my daughter gave me a book here just recently. It's my dad's stories, and I think she's writing them in the book. But we have this Turkey Brown story I normally tell on Thanksgiving, and they want me to tell it now every time. They've heard the thing about 20 times.
okay.
So I told them, they made me do it again this year. I said, you need to video this one because when I'm not here, you guys are going to want to hear this again. So you could play it on the video.
The Turkey Brown story that you already told?
No,
The previous episode or a new one?
This one, I don't know if I could tell on the air, but the Sun Bowl was a real adventure back then. But
well,
I can tell it if you want me to tell it, but
I want you to tell it. Let's hear it. We got to
right.
finish with a bang. Let's go.
We go out. It was the 19, I believe it was 1985. We were supposed to go play Notre Dame in the Hula Bowl, whatever the bowl is out there, and Notre Dame pulled out. And Coach Ross wanted to play Lou Holtz, because he had coached with them, and they had kind of a rivalry anyway. So we pull out and we got to go to the Sun Bowl and play Tennessee. I couldn't believe we were leaving Honolulu to go to El Paso, Texas. So anyway, we go out there and it's kind of a wild time. Anyway, they're going to have a barbecue out in this field somewhere. So I was driving in a car and the bus was going ahead of us. And we're out like in the desert. I see tumbleweeds going by and stuff. And where the heck are we at? I was in the back seat, and we were driving. And all of a sudden, the bus stops in the middle of nowhere. I go, where the hell are we stopping? And I didn't know what was happening at the time, but these bandits stopped the bus, and they had like the thing around their nose and the mask, and some of the kids started to get off the bus, and the guy puts a gun to their nose, and in fact Kevin Glover was dove over a seat and cut his eye. And so the bandits come on and they go, we want Turkey Brown. He says Turkey Brown went to Oklahoma. They played in this game last year, and they impregnated my daughter. They said, we also want Gib Romaine and David Salazzo. So all of a sudden, the kids start pointing these guys out. So they take them and they handcuff them, and they put them in the back of this pickup truck. And now I'm sitting in the back of this car, and I don't know what's going on, but I see these guys taking these guy off the bus and putting them in the back of this pickup truck. And the pickup truck takes off. There's dust going all over the place, and they're flying. They're going about 50 miles an hour, and they're bouncing in the back seat in the pickup truck. And all of a sudden, we hear a siren, and now they're coming back, and the cops are like right on the tail of this pickup truck, and they're all handcuffed, and they're lucky they're staying in the bed of the truck. They get out of the thing, and the guy starts firing a gun at our car. I go down like, I'm dropping. Like I thought Greg Williams, who was driving, I thought he was dead. So it turns out that this was all put on by the bowl, and the Turkey did go to Oklahoma the year before, but he didn't impregnate anybody, and they found this out, and I don't know how they got Gib Romaine. And David Salazzo is still down. He's down here in South Carolina. He still tells the story. So then we go to the barbecue. It wasn't even at that place, and I spoke about this this talent show they had. And, of course, Chuck Fossett got up there, and he starts doing Chuck Berry, and the Tennessee people, they're going nuts. And then they had some guy come up, and he imitated Johnny Majors, their coach. And then one of our guys got up and imitated Bobby Ross. And it's this thing. Then they had another guy get up, and he started going around to our freshmen and kind of hitting them in the face. We almost broke out in a brawl right at the barbecue place. Coach Ross got so upset, he said, "I'm leaving. Anybody going back with me, getting the bus now." So we all got up and we left the barbecue, And so that was the Turkey Brown story. If you did that today, you'd be in prison.
Yeah, had they staged a kidnapping by gunpoint to promote the bowl?
Well,
that is
and here's the kicker. George Pasikas was our linebacker coach, and he didn't go because he had a friend in town that they went to dinner, and the friend was a DEA agent. So we're at the hospitality room afterwards, and we're talking about this whole thing, and and the DEA agent says, "If I was on that bus and that guy came in, I'd have shot him right there." Could you imagine how that would have turned out?
Yeah. Oh, jeez. It kind of reminds me of like there's these YouTubers and TikTokers that like do pranks on people to get views on their channel. And some of the stuff they do is a lot like that. And there's going to be some repercussions to that at some point, like you just said. They're going to do it to the wrong person one time. But yeah, that is amazing.
Coach Durkin invited me back to Maryland to speak at their clinic. So I spoke up about Maryland and whatnot, and I told this story. And Durkin's wife came up to me afterwards. She says, "We went to the Sun Bowl. We didn't have anything like that."
Yeah.
I don't think they're doing that anymore.
No, that doesn't. I can't. That is shocking to me that they would stage that. The whole time you're
sitting. That was only one of the things they did. There were about 4 other things that were really crazy.
Wow. So, okay. Well, I said let's end with a bang. I think we did it. Well, there you go. Congratulations to everybody who has listened to all 5 episodes. You got the best story last. I tell you what, Coach, you mentioned it a couple of times. We're going to finish with the episode again. Tell everybody what you're doing, how to get to Football by Friedgen.
I got to put up more content, right? Yeah, I'm ready to go. I got to get my daughter in gear here. But Football by Friedgen's on YouTube and it's on Instagram. And, I'll promise to get things up as soon as possible.
And we will put the link to that in the description. And as I said, we'll put the link to all the episodes as well. And Coach, I just want to thank you again. This has been an amazing experience for me. I grew up as a fan. and just hearing all these stories. Like I said, I thought it was a cool project, like just doing the team, but that became sort of secondary to the stories. It's been awesome. So thank you so much for doing this. I cannot wait for people to see this and get their reactions to it. And I'm sure there's going to be some people who don't like some of our picks, but hey, whatever. But thank you, Coach.
You know, you're probably right because you're probably going to say I'm biased, which I probably am. But there's not many guys that know all the players that I've been at Maryland for all these years. So
Right.
I have a pretty firsthand knowledge of who's who and how they compare, which I think probably I'm the best to speak on it and some of them it's so close,
Yeah. Some of the
it,
picks, it's tough. It was tough to pick, but yeah,
with
like I
different eras
said,
too.
yeah. Well, it also just so happens Maryland's best eras happen to coincide with when you were coaching there. So you can say it's a bias, but they're the best eras. They just are, right? Except for the 50s, right? But yeah, so thanks, Coach. Thank you so much. Everybody check out Football by Friedgen. Check out the link in the description. And we'll see you guys next time. This is IMS Radio.